You could chop off a finger or three, maybe an arm, hit a major artery, something like that. Thank you for tuning in to KDOI Podcasting, where we create more than we consume. Hi, my name is Timothy Chemo Bryan, and in Season 2, which you're currently listening to right now, we're doing a bevy of different projects for you to try out and for you to, maybe give as a gift to loved ones and friends and family. This week's project is, it's titled Swords to Plowshares. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking an ammo crate and turning it into a flower bed. Now, I don't want you to think I'm some hippy-dippy kind of 60s peace, love, happiness, and all that kind of stuff. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about the inspiration behind the project and why I think it's a fantastic project for just about anyone to go ahead and give a shot. The first thing, though, I do need to bring up, and it's very vital, a couple episodes ago, we had the candle making project where there was danger involved, where you could burn yourself and possibly burn your house down. Well, the same warning I'm going to give you this time. Not only could you possibly burn your house down with an electrical fire, with power tools that you'll be using, you could chop off a finger or three, maybe an arm, hit a major artery, something like that. So, folks, I want you to take extra careful precautions here on this project. I definitely want you all to come back in the next episode and try the next project, which won't be as dangerous or deadly. But that's, hey, sometimes art has to be dangerous and deadly. So, the idea behind this project, I'm going to go into a little bit more personal items to give you a better picture of why I'm doing this project. So, I grew up in a house like most of us do, and at the ripe old age of 12, my dad lost his job and was laid off. It was in the early 80s, early mid-80s, and just when that big old recession was hitting. And it took him a long time to get work after that. We lost our house in all of it. We had to get rid of the house at that time at the ripe old age of 12. I haven't lived in a house until I turned about 40, when I was starting my family, and we went ahead and bought a nice house. Now, for me, it's a sentimental thing. That, living in a house with my family and being able to provide for them. I have a lovely wife and twin girls and a pretty interesting stepson. He loves hearing my stories about podcasting and working for the government. But for me, it's a personal thing of pride that, I have my own house that I can do these art projects with. I can have my hobby of podcasting. I can put something up on the wall. I can paint all the walls black if I wanted to, or purple or pink, what have you. It's up to me to do that. So for me, it's a personal point of pride, and I really enjoy having the house, even with all the frustrations that come with it. Well, when we purchased this house, the previous owner, the husband and wife, were both Marines. Now, obviously, they're not former Marines or ex-Marines because there's no such thing as former or ex-Marines. They were done with their service. They were veterans at the time. And, there is to this day, I have it out in the back deck, there is a placemat, doormat that has the U.S. Marines logo on it and words. I also got for free a desk, a big oak desk from a Marine colonel, I believe. My mother-in-law worked on Quantico and knew somebody that had a desk that they wanted to get rid of, and they gave it to me for free. They just said, "Hey, you got to move it," which, oh my God, it was worse than heavy, but we got it moved. What also was in the house was an ammo crate. Now, there was no ammunition in it. Thank goodness. We checked. I have 2 young kids. They would find it if there was anything in there. But yeah, it was an ammo crate, just sitting in the in the backyard shed doing nothing. And I've had ammo crates in the past. I've bought ammo crates from the Army Navy store back in Rockford, just for storage purposes. But I saw this ammo crate, and it was pretty deep. It looked fairly sturdy, and it wasn't too wide. And it reminded me of window boxes that I've seen in the city, because after we lost our house, we lived in a number of apartments. And when I moved to Chicago many, many moons ago, that's one of the things I always wanted, was to have a flower window box, because you're living in an apartment, you don't have the luxury of having your own garden or a spot to have a garden. So I always wanted a window box for myself, and sometimes I got it, and we tried to do. On our deck, we tried to do a window box with the plastic resin stuff, and that just never held up too well. So I looked at this ammo crate, and I thought to myself, you know what? This would make the perfect flower bed, flower box. That's the story for me behind the today's project, which is turning a ammo crate into a flower bed. Now, if you have a story behind any of the projects that you would like to share with us, definitely shoot us an email at kdoipodcasting@gmail.com. Obviously, you've been to the website at kdoipodcasting.com, and we definitely want to hear from you. We're also on the Twitter. I love the Twitter. I love it. It's at KDOI_podcasting. And I'm usually on that a few times out of the day when I'm having some downtime, which isn't very often, because like I said, I have twin girls, and they're turning 4 this June. Now, I went ahead and I've been thinking about this project for quite some time. And of course, I did it during Memorial Day weekend. Most people are out there, grilling, having a good time, shooting off fireworks, seeing parades, partying pretty hard. Myself, we stayed in the yard. We worked in our yard, added some plants, and I went ahead and made this flower box. It was a very contemplative weekend for me, just remembering the soldiers that either did not make it home, or they made it home and are no longer with us. So I definitely want to dedicate this project in memory to all the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, coasties that haven't had a chance to make it home, haven't made it home back to their loved ones, or if they have passed on and have given all they could for service to our country. So, without further ado, let's get on this project, shall we? All right. So, like I said, this project can be a dangerous project. You could lose fingers. So what are you going to need? Well, first and foremost, to turn a ammo crate into a flower bed, the first thing you're going to need is, drum roll please, an ammo crate. Now, where are you going to find these? I was lucky. It was sitting in my house. I'm sorry, I don't have another one. Otherwise, I would have, the first person to email me, I'd shoot one out to you. Pun intended with the ammo crate and shooting it out to you. But you can go to your local Army surplus store, Army Navy surplus store, wherever that may be for you, and go ahead and pick some up. Now, I've seen them as low as $20. I've seen them as high as $150. Just depends on how big you want to go with it. Mine was about 2 feet, 2 feet wide by 6 feet long by 3 feet deep. So we're looking, a fairly substantial piece of hardware there. The other thing you're going to need, I used for my legs on this, because I wanted it to be raised up, so that way we're not getting little rabbits and small little critters, because we have rabbits and squirrels, possums, and all that running through our yard. Because we don't live quite out in the country, but compared to Chicago, it's a little bit out in the boonies for me. My wife will definitely attest to my fear of furry little critters running in our yard. So I wanted it up on high and fairly sturdy. So I used 1x3 wood in 8-foot lengths for the legs on this. You're also going to need some deck screws. I utilized deck screws because this is going to be outdoors. Now, initially, the wood that you're going to use for the legs, that's going to look nice and spanking new. But later on, as it weathers, and I didn't put any stain on it, I didn't put any weather-resistant crap on it. It is going to patina very nicely. It'll turn a nice gray, which will match pretty well with the green of the actual ammo crate. So I used, like I said, 1x3 by 8 wood sticks of wood. Pine is just fine with me. And you're going to want to use 2 2-inch deck screws and 1 1/4-inch deck screws. You're going to say, hey, Tim, but why do I want, 2 different sizes of that? I'll get to that in a little bit here, but trust me, you're going to want 2 different sizes because what you're going to screw in, you're going to have to screw in through a few boards. So you'll need the 2-inch for the extra thick stuff, and the 1 1/4-inch for just the regular stuff. But make sure they're deck screws so that way they're not rusting out on you, because that's the last thing you want to have is a rusted screw. Nobody likes a rusted screw unless you do, in which case, let me recommend some other podcasts to you. Other things that you're going to need is I've got some plywood that I had used from another project that I was working on. I made some flower beds for my wife for her garden, and I was using, it was 2 feet by 4 feet plywood planks. And so I had some spare plywood planks left over from that project. And you can find those at Lowe's. Lowe's, not sponsoring this show, but that's okay. One day Lowe's will understand that I'm going to make them a lot of money. Lowe's, Michael's, their Hobby Lobby, a lot of these places. One day will recognize that they need to be paying me some money. And then also you want to go ahead and make sure that you have enough to, well, for me, I needed it because I needed to cover the bottom of the ammo crate because it had been sitting out in the weather and deteriorated somewhat. So that's what I used those plywood planks for. Now, it wouldn't be a flower bed if you don't have flowers. So there was a sale going on. Of course, it's, Memorial Day weekend. So there's a lot of lawn garden sales going on. Of course, I went out to Lowe's and picked up about 4 20-pound bags of potting soil. And then I picked out some annual flowers. They were perennial flowers. That way they'll keep on coming back. Of course, I had some garden tools already at the handy because I was planting some shrubs and some plants in my yard anyways. So those you're going to need. You may want to have some safety glasses and some gloves for yourself, so that way you don't cut yourself up, get some splinters, all that good stuff. If you have some sawdust kick up in your eyes, nothing's worse than sawdust kicking up in your eyes and you chopping off a finger. Hey, this is Timothy Kimo O'Brien, head instigator at KDOI Podcasting. We create more than we consume every other week, and we want to create with you. So check us out on our website, KDOIPodcasting.com. Email us at KDOIPodcasting@gmail.com. And the Twitter is at KDOI_podcasting. I want to thank you for the download that you just did, for the subscription that you just made, and for sharing this podcast with your friends. So thank you for creating more than you consume with us here at KDOI Podcasting. KDOI is a proud member of the GagglePod Network. GagglePod, a place for storytellers that need a strategy, a platform, and a chance to be heard.
Learn how to create your next podcast at gagglepod.com.
So you want to get all your supplies together and get it assembled pretty well. I would start off by cleaning out the ammo crate. Now mine had a ton of cobwebs in it. Like I said, the bottom of the ammo crate was fairly shot. So I knew I was going to have to reinforce the bottom. And so just make sure it's all cleaned off. Any sharp edges, or you can sand those down if you want to. If you want to stain it a different color than camo green, now would be the time to do it. If you want to do any weather treating to your legs, now would be the time to do it. So get that done ahead of time, so that way you're not trying to paint this stuff together while it's fully assembled, because you won't be able to get into all the cracks. I guarantee it. So the next thing that I did after I've cleaned everything off and I made sure that all my stuff is together is to go ahead and I cut down my 1x3s into 4-foot lengths. Now, when you see the pictures on this, you're going to go, oh my gosh, that's a little bit high. Well, I'm 6'2". I'm a tall guy. So for me, and I don't have the best back in the world. So for me, bending down is, I really don't want to do that too much. So for me, it's a decent height. For yourself, I would recommend if you have a bad back, you don't want to bend down, you get it set up to about waist level for yourself. Whatever that is for you. I have a ton of listeners out there of all different shapes, sizes, heights, and lack of heights. As long as your feet touch the ground, you're not short. Just remember that, folks. Feet touching ground, you're not short. And shorter people can spit up your nose. So watch out, tall people. My big sister Barb always reminds me of that, and she's 5'2" and maybe 105 soaking wet. So make sure that you got it at a comfortable height. For me, 4 feet was comfortable. So I had 4 lengths of 8-foot 1x3, cut it down into 4 feet lengths. So that gave me 8 legs. Now, people are like, well, wait a minute. We're just, kind of making a flower bed here. Why do I need 8 legs? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to take each of those corners, each of those 4 corners of this rectangle. And I'm teaching my daughters, shapes at this point, so they know their rectangles, their squares, their triangles, and their circles. Now, getting them to draw it, that's a different thing. But what you're going to do is you're going to take each of these sticks of wood, and you're going to do what's called a butt joint, a butt. That's right. It's not an ass joint. It's a butt joint, and don't smoke it because it's going to smell like a butt. No, but seriously, folks. What a butt joint is it's just putting 2 pieces of wood flat against each other. Now, how I did it was on one corner, you have one side that's flush with the edge of the actual crate. And the other piece of wood lays on top of that first piece of wood and the crate. So it's kind of covering it over. I'm using my hands with this, but you'll see it in the pictures what I'm talking about. I'm not Italian, but I play one on TV. Wait a minute, this is TV, this is a podcast. Never mind, scratch that. Anyhow, you want to make sure that you have one that is flush with the edge of the crate, and then the other one, which is at a direct 90 degrees, is going to be covering the piece of wood, and it's also going to be covering the crate. You're going to need a couple of power tools. And here's my setup. I had my circular saw. I had 2 cordless drills. Now, I'm not trying to, be super manly on this and go, hoo, look at me. I got 2 cordless drills, I've got a hairy chest. I drink my coffee black. It doesn't make you a better person if you have 2 cordless drills, 4 cordless drills, 8 cordless drills. You need the tools that you need to get the job done. If you don't have the tools that you need to get the job done, then what are you doing? You're just standing around there looking silly. So You can grab cordless drills fairly cheap these days. Again, go to Lowe's. If you're a veteran, you get a 10% discount. If you know a veteran, have them go buy it for you. It's like, when you're 16 and wanting to your big brother to go buy you some booze. Same thing. Go find a veteran. They'll hook you up with that Lowe's discount. Not a problem. All right. And thank you, Lowe's, for that 10% discount. It is a lifesaver some days. It is a lifesaver. So what you want to do is you want to take with one of the drills, and this is a trick that I used to teach my students in my my stagecraft class. So basically, it was an intro to building a set and being my slave for about 16 weeks in college. You take two drills. One of the drills is going to have a drill bit in it, a thin drill bit. Maybe a 1/8 inch, maybe a little bit less than that. Just a drill bit, because that's going to be your pilot hole. Now, they do have special bits that are specifically made to be a pilot hole, but I got away with it with a 1/8 inch drill bit, so that way I could drill my pilot holes. The other bit you're going to need now for these deck screws, a lot of times you'll see a Phillips head or a flathead for the drill bit on that. And that matches up with the head of the screw. Well, the deck bits, the deck screws that I have a special kind of star bit that grips into there tightly, and it usually prevents you from really wrecking the head of that screw. It gets in there nice and tight, and you don't have any tear out on the head of the screw there. So your other cordless drill is loaded up with that. So what I do is I drill. I go ahead and basically I choose one corner and I work that corner until it's all the way done, and then I move on to the next corner for my ammo crate. So you're starting out for one corner. I don't care what corner it is, but what you want to do is you want to and you got to look at your crate to see how it's going to work best. Because my crate had a little lip in it. That you had the box area, had a little lip, and you had an insert in there that came up about another inch or 2 inches, which looks fantastic for me. It was an unsuspected surprise. But what you want to make sure that you do is you line it up how you want it to look. For me, I lined it up with the bottom of that lip. Well, with the top of that lip, right before it got into that insert area, that higher insert area. For me, that's exactly what I needed. So I had that all lined up, and then I had it lined up with the side. Remember, one piece is going to be with the side of the ammo crate. The other one's going to cover it. So the one that's going to be lined up with the side, that's the first one I put in. I drilled 2 pilot holes into the crate itself. Now, I went in far enough so that way I was in through the plank of wood and just touching into the crate. Some people will say, well, you want to measure that out exactly and put a piece of tape on your drill bit. I eyeball it, okay? I eyeball it. It's fine. You can eyeball it. Just get it into the crate itself. And then go ahead and take your other cordless drill and put your screws on in with your cordless drill right there. Just knock those out. Why are you doing this? Well, the 1x3 is a thin piece of wood. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, okay? And you're doing it towards the end. Now, I put my screws in I'd say a good half a hand width, so about 3 inches from the top and from the bottom. So that way it's got a good bite into the actual ammo crate. I would say you want to do at least 2 screws in there for yourself. 2 screws are better than 1 because 1 screw your leg there can kind of kick, and you don't want it to kick out of place. So get the one side in and then go ahead and put in the other side. Now, how I did the other side is I went ahead and drilled my pilot hole again into the ammo crate itself. All right. 2 screws in that as well. Again, about a half a hand width from the top and half a hand width from the bottom is where your screws should go. Now, For extra stability, what I did is, since you have one since you have one side of that leg covering the other side, I went ahead and screwed those legs in together right at the middle and right towards the bottom. Again, you're going to want, at this point, you have to use that pilot hole, that pilot bit, because if you don't, if you just try to put in your screw, you're going to split the wood and you're going to mess up that chunk of wood. And who wants to do that? I mean, wood, it's not like it grows on trees, folks. All right. It's hopefully a renewable resource, but who knows? Wood doesn't grow on trees. And, money also doesn't grow on trees. And wood costs money. So make sure that you're using your wood correctly. So you go ahead and you screw those legs in. I put in 2 screws, one in the middle, one towards the end, using that about a half hand width rule of thumb. Now you can get a measuring tape and knock that out for yourself and measure it at certain spots. Myself, I didn't want to take the time to measure it out, and I was done with it. Okay? You're going to repeat this process 3 more times, so that way you'll have 4 legs on there. That should be sturdy enough. Now, if you are finding that it is not sturdy enough, what you can do is you can cut, well, you're going to have to cut some more wood, but you can do what's called stringers, and those stringers will span the distance between the legs. And you can cross it underneath the ammo crate, so that way you have, going from like bottom left to top right and top left to bottom right. You can cross it like that, or you can do it just straight across, where you're going to have your 4 straight pieces there, going from your 2 short sides to your 2 long sides. You can do it up like that. The way I made my legs, I feel they're pretty sturdy. It's going to be sitting in the backyard anyways, and you can dig a hole to sink the leg into the actual ground itself, and then cover up that hole. You can throw concrete in there if you want to, if you want it something super sturdy. I was happy with it just sitting right on top of the ground, because I've got a very flat area there, and I'm placing it up against a fence. So theoretically, it's going to take a lot of wind at the right angle, at a really crazy angle, to knock this thing over. Of course, I say that, and we'll be in hurricane warnings in next week, I'm sure of it. You have that portion of it taken care of. You've got it on its legs, and it's rocking and rolling and good to go. Now, for me, like I said earlier, I had the bottom part was pretty rotted out. I had some good chunks in there, but not a whole hell of a lot to work with. So I took those plywood planks that I had from a previous project, and I went ahead and I used the 2-inch deck screws, and I cut that wood to fit. A little bit of overhang on it, but I cut it to fit, and I screwed that from the bottom into the bottom of the ammo crate. So that way, when I put in all the dirt and all the soil, it doesn't fall all the way through, and the stuff isn't laying on the ground. It actually will stay up in the flower bed. So you want to make sure that you're using something that's not too heavy, because you don't want to add more weight to it, but something that's sturdy enough that is going to be able to hold about 80 pounds of dirt and any of the water that's going to be accumulating in it. Now, a big thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go ahead and drill in some holes for drainage on that. You may also want to put in some garden tarp. It looks just like kind of a really thin black blanket or black felt paper. You can put that in first to help out with the drainage and to filter it out, but you definitely have to have the drainage holes drilled into it. Now, my drainage holes, I drilled right into the rotted bottom. The rotted bottom. That sounds like a punk rock band my wife would be proud to join into. And then I also drilled into the plywood that I had just cut to size and screwed on in. So I would say for my flower bed, I used 5 holes, 4 in the corners and 1 in the center, and that should be plenty of drainage for it. I used a 1/4 inch bit on that, so that way it's a big enough hole that the water will get through, will find its way through, but the soil won't just keep on slowly dripping out of it. So 1/4 inch bit should do you just fine. All right, now you're at the wonderful point of no return. You're gonna go ahead and put in the soil. Well, first though, make sure that you have this flower bed placed in some place that is, going to be aesthetically pleasing to you. So make sure, I would say, nice level ground. You could do it in your back patio. That's fine. You cut you cut the legs down a lot more. You can have that on your deck or your back patio, or hell, maybe even your front patio. Whatever's going to work for you on that. Mine is out in the backyard up against the fence, where I can have my cup of coffee, sit on my deck and look at it, or I can, if it's too cold outside, I can, sit on my couch, look out the window and go, hey, that's my flower bed out there. Fantastic. Glad I'm inside here and not outside there where it's raining. So I put mine outside. I did not dig any holes for it, but I would recommend, if you have a area that is not level, I'd recommend digging some holes, maybe throwing some concrete in there if you don't mind that, just to make sure that it's going to stay upright and stay nice and safe and secure, because you don't want your kids knocking into it and knocking it over. And then we put in our soil. We've come to that moment of truth where we put in the soil. This is where you get your hands nice and dirty. And then you go ahead and put in your plants, whatever you're going to put in there. Myself, like I said earlier, I put in some annuals because I plan on having this out here for a couple of years. Now, maybe in a few years I won't like it. I'll remove it, cut down the legs, do something else with it. But for right now, it's sitting just outside of my basement studio here, and it's looking fantastic. I've already shown it to some friends at work, and they're already looking at it, going, "Hey, when are you going to build me one?" And my reply back to them is, "When you find me an ammo crate, I'll more than happily build you one, and I'll put it in your yard, not a problem." But this is a great project that I think just about anybody can do. Now, I did mention the screw sizes. And I want to get back to that for just a quick minute. I don't want to forget that, because I'm just thinking right now, if I forget to tell you where to use your screw, you're not going to know where to use your screw. So for the 1.25 screws, I use that on the legs when I'm screwing the legs in together. And the 2-inch screws, I use that on the bottom where I was screwing in the plywood, because the plywood itself was about 3/4 inch to an inch. I take that back. It was 3/4 of an inch deep, but I wanted it to bite really hard into. But then again, I'm going through the kind of rotted bottom, which is another 1/4 inch. So that puts me up to an inch. So I want to make sure I got a good enough bite. 1.25 really isn't going to give you that good of enough of a bite. So I wanted to make sure that I had an inch bite into the actual ammo crate. And since it's going to be holding a lot of weight, definitely the 2-inch screws are definitely needed for that. And they're going to get some weather on them too. So make sure they're deck screws that make sure that they don't rust out on you. That's where you need to use your screws. Use them wisely, my children. Use them wisely. All right, so like I said, I think this is a project that just about anyone can do. Yeah, there are some tools that are going to be required for you in this project that you're going to want to purchase. You're definitely going to want to get a circular saw. You're definitely going to want to get a couple of cordless screws. Get yourself an assortment of bits and deck screws, drywall screws, all that kind of stuff. Get yourself an assortment of it, because you're going to find that, if you own your own home, you're going to find lumber all over the place. And that's just, you got to have lumber around the house because you want to build something or repair something. I've got kids, trust me. I'm repairing something, or I'm building something just about every other weekend. So make sure you have the proper tools and the proper safety equipment with those tools, and make sure you know how to use them. I would recommend having somebody with you just in case something does go south and they need to call 911. Okay? So remember, if something goes south, what's the number you call? What's the number to 911? Exactly. Now, all the while I was doing this project, I highly recommend that you don't drink a beer while you're doing this because you're using power tools. Drink a beer after you're done. I was myself listening to some Nathaniel Rathcliffe and the Night Sweats, some of his music, and it just pumped me up and got me going really good. For this project. And I can't wait to see how many of you try this project out. So if you would be interested in trying it out, and if you do actually try it out, go ahead and shoot me an email at kdoipodcasting@gmail.com. You're already on the website over at kdoipodcasting.com. Our Twitter handle is at KDOI_podcasting, and we are part of the wonderful GagglePod network. You've heard their bump-ins and their mid-rolls and pre-rolls and post-rolls and dinner rolls and Hawaiian rolls. But GagglePod is the folks that inspired me to start up my podcast, and they'll inspire you if you're a creative type to start up your podcast, and we'll be more than happy to show you how to do that for yourself, because there's nothing better than sharing your gift with other folks, and I truly hope that you share your gift with us and tell us your stories behind these projects. Well, that's all I have for you this week, and like I said, I can't wait to see how many of you try it. My name is Timothy Kimo O'Brien. I'm head instigator here over at KDOI Podcasting. That stands for Kimo's Den of Iniquity, and I look forward to talking with you all again in about 2 weeks, where we'll have more projects and more surprises for you. So until then, have yourself a great week, and remember, create more than you consume. I don't want you to think I'm some hippy-dippy kind of 60s peace, love, happiness, and all that kind of stuff.